Hey, Nigel here. Just a couple of things before we get into today's video. For starters, thank you to everyone who sent in questions for our upcoming face reveal and Q&A. This is the first time we've done anything like this on the channel, and Luke and I were really blown away by the number of responses we got. It was really encouraging to see. We wanted to let you know that we will officially be dropping that video next Wednesday, September 6th at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So yeah, if that's of interest to you, be sure to tune in. We'll also be making a couple of other announcements in that video about the state of the channel going forward. Because we're still wildly busy getting all of that together, the other thing we wanted to give you a heads up about is that today's story is technically a re-release from a 3-part video we did a couple of years back about missing campers. That being said, there was recently a pretty significant update in this case, so we've included some new information about that at the end of the video. Alright, with that out of the way, let's get into it. On the night of Friday, May 28th, 2011, 20-year-old Madison Scott left her home in Vanderhoof, British Columbia, with her friend Geordie Bolduc. The two women were headed to Hogsback Lake to attend an annual birthday party held by one of their friends, and planned to camp out overnight. The pair drove to the lake with all of the supplies they thought they would need for the evening in Madison's white 1990 Ford F-150 pickup truck. However, shortly after they arrived, sometime after 8 p.m. and began to set up their tent, they realized that they had forgotten their tent poles and decided to return to Vanderhoof to pick them up, along with a larger tent. Though Hogsback Lake is located in a remote area, it's only about a 20-minute drive from Vanderhoof, roughly 20 kilometers off of BC's Highway 16. After briefly talking with Madison's mother, Dawn, Madison and Geordie returned to the campsite, set up, and began to collect some firewood with a small group of people that had already arrived. As they did so, others soon began to show up, many of whom Madison and Geordie did not know. Several of Madison's friends would later remark that as the party began to reach full swing, a large number of those in attendance were not well known to them, and were not necessarily friends with the person throwing the party either. It's believed that they found out about the event because Garrett, the friend throwing the party, had advertised the gathering on Facebook. At approximately 12:30 a.m., Geordie told Madison that she had changed her mind about staying the night, and was going to return home with her new boyfriend, Tyler. Madison supposedly pleaded with her to stay, but Geordie said she was done with the evening. Not only was she way too drunk, but a fight had recently broken out at the party, and Geordie had been knocked into the campfire. Geordie offered Madison a ride home with her and Tyler, but Madison supposedly refused. She was already settled into her sleeping bag in her tent and was preparing to go to bed. Geordie and Tyler left shortly after. Over the next few hours, everyone else at the party also began to leave. It's unclear at what point Madison realized that she would be the only person camping out that night, but at around 3 a.m. on Saturday morning, the last of the partygoers left Hogsback Lake. At least one of those groups of people again asked Madison if she wanted to leave with them, and she apparently declined. At approximately 8:30 a.m. that morning, Geordie returned to the Hogsback Lake campsite to pick up the belongings that she had left behind the night before. She discovered Madison's tent unzipped, her sleeping bag pushed to the side, and her truck locked and still parked where it had been the previous night. However, there was no sign of Madison anywhere. It's unclear what Geordie made of the situation at the time, but what we do know is that she was apparently not alarmed enough to contact Madison's family. She needed to get to work that morning, so she simply grabbed her belongings and left the lake once again. Roughly 2 hours later, Garrett arrived to clean up the campsite from the previous evening. He also noted that Madison's truck and tent were still at the site, but would later claim that the tent was zipped up, so he assumed Madison was still sleeping, and left after he finished cleaning. Throughout Saturday, there was no sign of Madison anywhere, and neither her friends nor her family were able to get in contact with her. However, from the perspective of her family, this was not considered to be overly alarming. When Madison left the house the day before, she didn't really have concrete plans. Her mother, Dawn, thought that she might be spending an extra night out at the lake, or else had made different arrangements with some friends. Because cell reception wasn't the greatest at the lake, it was not always possible to stay in contact. On Saturday night, there was another party held at the exact same spot as the night before. It's not clear whether this was organized by the same people, but what is known is that some people that Madison knew were in attendance, including her younger sister, Georgia. Georgia would not say anything about attending the party until a little later, since she was underage and was not supposed to be there. Madison's truck, tent, and belongings were still at the site on Saturday night, and at some point during the party, her tent was flattened by a young man in attendance. It remains unclear why he did this, but given the amount of alcohol present, we can likely assume that he was screwing around. While it seems strange that Madison's truck and belongings didn't draw more attention that second night, what's important to note is that the second party was much larger than the first. With more people in attendance, and not necessarily the same people, it might not have been obvious that the belongings were unattended. Madison also had yet to officially be reported missing, so no one would have had any reason to be suspicious either. That would happen the next morning, when Madison's parents, Dawn and Eldon, began to grow concerned. It was one thing for their daughter to stay out an extra night, but the lack of contact was becoming more and more worrying. Eldon and Dawn drove to Hogsback Lake that morning, and like several other witnesses from the day before, found their daughter's tent, truck, and belongings at the campsite. Unlike the others, however, Dawn and Eldon investigated closer. They discovered that with the exception of her iPhone 4, her ring of keys, and the clothes that she was wearing on the night she went to Hogsback Lake, none of Madison's possessions were missing. This included her purse, expensive motorbike equipment, alcohol, and other things that would have been the target of any likely thief. Dawn managed to find some other people camping nearby who knew her daughter, and they said that they had not seen her, but confirmed that her truck and tent had not moved in the time that they had been there. Eldon did some larger circles of the area in an effort to track down Madison, but this search came up empty. At about 12:30 p.m., Dawn and Eldon contacted the RCMP to report their daughter missing. Police arrived in the area a short time later, and an official search began. This effort was expanded substantially on Monday. On the ground, volunteers and investigators searched on foot, horseback, and with all-terrain vehicles. Aerial searches were conducted, including some using infrared to spot residual body heat that might be on the ground. Police divers and boat searchers also spent substantial time looking in Hogsback Lake. Though water searches are notoriously difficult, Hogsback Lake is only 22 feet at its deepest, and the water is clear with excellent visibility. Cadaver dogs were likewise brought in to search the edges of the lake to pick up any potential scent. Unfortunately, none of these efforts managed to turn up any sign of Madison Scott. When police called off the official search a few days later, Madison's family and friends continued looking, and also started an awareness campaign about her disappearance. At least 150 volunteers distributed flyers, bumper stickers, posters, and other items designed to aid in the police investigation. An initial reward of $15,000 offered for information in the case quickly increased to $100,000. The disappearance rocked the small and tight-knit community of Vanderhoof, which only has a population of about 4,500 people. Madison's heartbroken family made numerous public appeals, hoping for her safe return. However, years passed, and the case remained a mystery. While theories in the case range from Madison running away to suffering some sort of accident, most involve foul play. In terms of the runaway theory, it really seems like there's no evidence to suggest that this is what happened, nor does it seem like there was any reason for Madison to do so. Her home life was happy, and she was described as an outgoing and social person with a large friend group. Also, if she was planning to run away, why leave her vehicle and possessions behind? The accident theory is slightly easier to believe, though again there is little evidence indicating what could have happened. Family and friends say that it's hard to believe that Madison would have simply walked away from her campsite, nor would it have made sense to do so. One semi-plausible theory is that Madison's disappearance was the result of an animal attack. There are some reports that a cougar had recently been spotted in the area, and these attacks do happen. But again, if this were the case, some remains likely would have been discovered during the initial search, or at least some evidence of a struggle at the campsite. Neither of these things were found. That leaves the numerous foul play theories that have emerged over the years. At the time of the disappearance, Madison's mother said that there was a man she was interested in romantically who wasn't interested in her. Friends said that there was another man who was interested in Madison, but whose feelings she did not return. He was considered suspicious by the friends because they knew that privately the man had been upset about this. Both men were apparently interviewed by police, but there was no evidence actually linking them to the disappearance. In several of the sources we came across during our research, Dawn Scott mentioned that there was a record of a call made to Madison's phone at around 12:30 a.m. on the morning of her disappearance. She said that the call was from, quote, a young guy who we know, but did not elaborate further. It's unclear whether this person is either of the two men previously mentioned, or is someone else entirely. A number of other foul play theories involve Madison's friend Jordy. Many found it suspicious that Jordy would leave her friend behind, or that she would have agreed to camp out with Madison that night in the first place if she knew she was going to be hanging out with her new boyfriend. However, it appears that Jordy's relationship with her boyfriend had only really started that evening, meaning that her plans simply might have changed. As to why she didn't contact Madison's family after finding her empty tent that Saturday morning, it's bizarre, but perhaps she was simply hungover and in a rush. Numerous sources state that Jordy agreed to take several polygraph tests, and she claims that on at least one of those occasions, police told her that she, quote, aced it. The rest of the most notable theories in the case revolve around either a serial killer or some sort of stranger being involved in Madison's disappearance. The American serial killer Israel Keyes has been suggested many times, as he was known to travel long distances to commit crimes. However, his MO was also usually to steal things from his victims. Given that almost all of Madison's belongings were found at her campsite, many view it as unlikely that Keyes was involved. Given the case's proximity to Highway 16, there have also been numerous suggestions that Madison's disappearance could be related to some of the notorious Highway of Tears cases. At least two disappearances in the area, that of Bonnie Marie Joseph and Anita Florence, are somewhat similar to Madison's, in that they vanished by their vehicles and some of their valuables were left behind. However, Madison's family has fought particularly hard not to have her disappearance associated with those other cases. It's not exactly clear why this is, but based on interviews we saw with Dawn Scott, it appears she does not believe her daughter's disappearance is connected. While all of these theories are technically possible, no evidence has been found to prove the involvement of a serial killer or some other stranger. It should also be noted that due to the lack of a struggle found at Madison's campsite, many believe that if foul play was involved, she likely left with the perpetrator willingly. This would seem to suggest that the culprit was someone she knew rather than a stranger. At the time of this recording, there are sadly few answers to be had in the case. Madison is remembered by her family and friends as an independent, outgoing, and vibrant person who would have given the shirt off her back for a friend in need. Hopefully, new evidence will emerge in the case, and this tragic and mysterious story can finally be brought to a close. On Monday, May 29th, 2023, almost 12 years to the day that Madison Scott was last seen alive, representatives from the RCMP issued a somber announcement in connection with the case. They stated that after all this time, Madison's remains had been found, and that the identification had been confirmed by the BC Coroner's Service. While authorities went on to say that they were executing a warrant at a rural property on the east side of Vanderhoof, and that, quote, additional resources are anticipated to be on scene for as long as may be required. This was the extent of the details provided to the public. As a result, we do not know exactly where the tragic discovery was made, or if new information or evidence was responsible for the breakthrough. At the time of this recording, no arrests have been made, though police say foul play has not been ruled out in the case. The development has been understandably heartbreaking for Madison's family, who never gave up on the idea that she might one day return home. Still, the news reportedly provided them with some relief, with the family saying in a statement, quote, the emotions we have experienced since Sunday cannot be summarized. However, we are once again astonished at the outpour of support that we have received from family, friends, and our communities. This support has been unwavering since day one, which we are forever grateful for, and truly believe that it is the reason that Maddie has been found. As a family, we now have the opportunity to allow Maddie to rest. They went on to say, quote, We trust that with patience, persistence, and belief, that we will receive answers and remain motivated to achieve closure. Following the announcement, a vigil was held in Madison's honor at a local high school in Vanderhoof. The memorial brought together more than 1,000 community members who gathered to honor her life. At the time of this recording, the investigation into Madison Scott's death remains ongoing. Anyone with information about the case is encouraged to reach out to police via their tip line at the following numbers. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a second to give a huge shout out to everyone who has made it this far into the video. Seriously, thank you so much for watching. If you found today's upload interesting and informative, we'd be honored if you'd consider liking and subscribing, as well as hitting the notification bell and selecting all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to help support the channel, we'd love to have you join us over on Patreon. Patrons get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. You can learn more at patreon.com/crimezone, where you'll also find some of the fine folks whose names are currently on screen. All that being said, we understand that not everyone has the means to support financially, and that's totally okay. We appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much everyone, and take care.